Tiptoeing like she was in a nightmare, Jessica pushed her. The first thing she noticed was the silence. The second was the motionless body on the floor. Her mother was lying on her side, not far from the bed. Her hair was disheveled. One arm was stretched out in front of her, as if she was trying to cover herself at the last moment. The glass in the clock on the nightstand was broken, and right next to her body was a small shell casing, like a calling card. Vanessa had suffered 2 gunshot wounds. One was non-fatal, in the forearm. The second was in the head. Judging by the position of the body and the trajectory of the bullet, the shot was fired from close range, almost point blank. The police were shocked. No signs of forced entry, no obvious evidence. Everything looked almost sterile. Dear viewers, in the next video releases you will find very intriguing and confusing cases. And in order not to miss them, be sure to subscribe to the channel and please like the video. At first glance, Vanessa Mintz's life seemed like an example of how to maintain human dignity, even after going through trials that undermine the inner core. Originally from North Carolina, Vanessa grew up in a deeply religious family. Her father, a Baptist pastor, a man of strict principles and soft power, was respected not only by parishioners, but also by neighbors in the area. Her mother, a housewife with a sharp mind and rare insight, taught her daughters to listen to their hearts and not be afraid to tell the truth. In this house, everything was based on trust, discipline, and Christian love. From a young age, Vanessa knew how to win trust. She was one of those people who you immediately want to call a real person. Those close to her described her as caring, a little strict, but incredibly loyal. She had a quiet voice, but a strong character. At school, she was respected for her honesty, and later, as an adult, for her ability to maintain dignity in the most difficult situations. After graduating from college, she took the path that seemed stable and reliable to her. She went into real estate. Vanessa became a realtor and quickly gained respect in her city of Hendersonville. Her clients said that she did not sell houses. She helped find a future. Vanessa's personal life did not develop right away. Her first marriage was short-lived, but it gave her the most precious thing: 2 daughters. Jessica and Andrea became the meaning of her life. For their sake, Vanessa worked tirelessly, from morning until late evening, even on weekends. But she herself did not deny herself the right to happiness. A few years after the divorce, she met a man named Travis McGraw, a handsome, charismatic firefighter and Air Force reservist. Their acquaintance was almost accidental, but nothing in Vanessa's life was truly accidental. She knew how to read people, sense their motivation, and at first it seemed to her that Travis was a reliable, honest, decent person. The wedding was held in a small circle, but with real warmth. For Vanessa, it was a chance to start a new chapter, with a man who promised to be there, to share both her work and joy. Together, they bought a small motel in the town of Saluda, a 40-minute drive from their home. They called it Saluda Mountain Lodge. It was a cozy family business, modest at first glance, but with huge potential. Vanessa believed in this business. She furnished each room, personally chose the curtains, the pictures on the walls, even the scents for the automatic sprayers. She wanted her guests to feel at home. The lodge became not only a source of income, but also her creative outlet. But the deeper Vanessa immersed herself in work, the more an invisible rift appeared between her and Travis. He was staying late at work more and more often, became secretive, and became distant. At first, Vanessa attributed it to fatigue, then to the difficulties of adapting to the family business. She tried not to pay attention to the little things: strange calls, sudden business trips, her husband's nervousness. However, her intuition, the same instinct that had always helped her in life, began to tell her that there was something more hidden behind this coldness. One of the moments was etched in the memory of her eldest daughter. Vanessa returned home after an evening shift at the lodge. She looked depressed, silent. Later, at dinner, she blurted out, "It seems that someone in my house is not entirely honest." Jessica did not attach much importance to the words. Who knows, maybe one of the employees did not carry out the task well. But now, looking back, she remembers it as a cry from the heart. Against the background of personal worries, Vanessa continued to hold on. She had a special gift, Even when a storm was raging inside, she knew how to remain calm and reserved. But those who really knew her saw how she had changed in recent times. She stopped laughing like before. Circles began to appear under her eyes. Her gaze became tense. Some friends said that Vanessa seemed to be constantly thinking about something, as if weighing an important decision. Despite all this, Vanessa did not allow herself to give up. The business was developing. Her daughters were nearby, and even in moments of doubt, she continued to believe that everything would work out. She was not a woman prone to drama. On the contrary, she always tried to resolve everything peacefully, through conversation, compromise. Therefore, even when she, according to some sources, learned about her husband's possible infidelity, she did not make a scandal. She chose a different path, a frank conversation. Some suggest that this conversation was the turning point. Vanessa gave an ultimatum: save the family or leave. The morning of February 19, 2011, began with an uneasy silence for Jessica Freeman. Usually, if her mother didn't answer her phone, she would text, "Busy, call back later." But this time, nothing. No answer, no short reply. Jessica waited another hour, then got in her car and drove to the motel in Saluda, where Vanessa was supposed to be the night before. Outside, the February sky was quickly growing dim. The air was dry, as if something had frozen in anticipation. And as she turned the narrow road toward the hotel, her heart sank. Something about the silent building told her that something was wrong. Saluda Mountain Lodge was her mother down to the last detail. Even the welcome sign hanging at the entrance seemed to be an expression of Vanessa herself. Open, friendly, a little old school, but cozy. Jessica stopped the car and walked around the building. The TV was on in the office, but the windows were dark, and there were no footsteps or conversations. She called out, "Mom?" But there was only silence in response. The door to the administrative area was unlocked. This immediately alerted her. Vanessa always locked the room, even if she was only going out for a couple of minutes. Inside, everything looked almost normal. Papers on the table, a coffee mug, an unopened bottle of water. But there was one oddity: an open cash register. It contained only small bills, a couple of coins. About $200 were missing. Perhaps there had been a theft? Or had her mother simply not had time to close the cash register? Jessica moved further, deeper into the administrative rooms, where the living area was. The door to the bedroom was ajar. Tiptoeing, as if in a nightmare, Jessica pushed it. The first thing that caught her eye was the silence. The second was a motionless body on the floor. The mother was lying on her side, not far from the bed. Her hair was disheveled. One arm was stretched out in front of her, as if she was trying to cover herself at the last moment. The glass in the clock on the nightstand was broken, and right next to her body was a small shell casing. Jessica did not scream. She froze. At that moment, the inner voice, the one that had previously told her that everything was simply wrong, was already screaming at the top of its lungs. Later, during the official examination, it would become known that Vanessa received 2 gunshot wounds. One was non-fatal in the forearm. The second was in the head. Investigators immediately noted that the shooting was carried out at close range. The weapon was a 12-gauge shotgun. There were no signs of a struggle or signs of forced entry at the scene. No one had entered from the outside. No one had broken down the doors. Everything looked as if whoever did this knew where they were going and who they were waiting for. Nothing was turned upside down in the room. No valuables were missing. Only money from the cash register and that same cartridge case lying there like a business card. When the Polk County Sheriff's Office arrived, the area was already cordoned off. Jessica was sitting on a bench in front of the building, hugging herself. She wasn't crying. She was just staring at a point, as if trying to rewind reality. The first thing the detectives did was question her daughter. Then they began their inspection. It became clear in the first hours. This was not a random crime. The tracks indicated that the criminal knew the layout, knew Vanessa's routine, knew that she would be alone. One of the first questions that the investigators faced was the motive. Money? Too little. Robbery? No signs of forced entry. And then they came across a person who, logically, should have been nearby but wasn't. Her husband, Travis McGraw. His absence immediately raised questions. According to his relatives, he was in the house with his son from his first marriage, in the city of Asheville, about 20 kilometers from the scene of the tragedy. However, even these details did not sound convincing, especially considering that the couple had been having a tense relationship in recent months. While Vanessa's body was being sent for forensic examination, the police began to analyze the interior of the lodge. The shell casing was of particular interest. There were no obvious fingerprints on it, but the caliber and type of pellets matched the hunting cartridges that were sold in local gun shops. In itself, this was only circumstantial evidence, but in combination with other details, it began to build a picture. In parallel with the examination of the crime scene, the operatives went to interrogate Travis. He was calm, spoke little, but confidently. According to him, he had no problems with his wife and spent the evening in the house without leaving. However, one phrase, thrown out almost casually, made the investigators wary. He said, "Probably one of the clients. We had strange people there." It would seem a harmless assumption. But there was a strange detail in it. Too quick a transition to the version about a random intruder. It seemed like he knew where to direct suspicion. The first results of the forensic examination confirmed. Death occurred at about 3 to 4 a.m. This meant that the criminal had enough time to escape. The doors and windows were closed, but not locked. Vanessa clearly knew who she let in. The crime had signs of being planned. There was no screaming, no panic, and, judging by the testimony of the guests staying in the motel rooms, no one heard anything. This only strengthened the version that the shot was fired from a weapon with a shortened barrel. It is loud, but at close range it can be relatively quiet in a closed room. A day after the tragedy, one of the investigators decided to look through the recordings from the surveillance cameras. But there were none. The motel, despite regular reminders from Vanessa, was still not equipped with a video surveillance system. It seemed like a minor oversight, but in this case, it became fatal. The cameras could have recorded who entered the office that night. However, the investigation had another hope. Phones. Modern mobile devices not only save calls and messages, but also record the movements of their owners. Requests were filed to collect call details for Vanessa and Travis. While the requests were being filed, the prosecutor's office began collecting information about the personal life of the deceased. It turned out that Vanessa really did suspect her husband of cheating. A few weeks before the tragedy, she talked about this to a friend. And 2 days before her death, according to unconfirmed reports, Vanessa called a woman named Mary Beth, Travis's alleged lover. This conversation could have been the final turning point. Some of her relatives claimed that she gave Travis a choice: stay with her or leave forever. And in this context, her death no longer looked like a tragic accident, but like an attempt to eliminate a person who began to interfere with a new life. 3 days after the body was found, police seized hunting rifles from Travis's garage. One of the shotguns, a Mossberg 500, matched the caliber and barrel type of the gun that fired the shot. An examination showed that the cartridges found in the suspect's car matched the shell casing found at the scene of the tragedy. The evidence began to fall into place. And although there was no direct proof yet, the truth that they were afraid to say out loud was increasingly felt in the air. The killer was one of their own. As the first hours after the discovery of Vanessa Mintz's body turned into days, the investigation entered the phase where every little detail could change the course of the case. There were no witnesses, no surveillance cameras, no obvious motive that would fit the classic robbery version. But there was a sense that the crime was committed with cold blood and a certain level of calculation. Polk County investigators knew that if they did not start unraveling the matter quickly, it could drag on for years. And the first lead was the victim's husband, Travis McGraw. From the very beginning, Travis did not demonstrate the behavior that was expected of him. He did not show open grief, did not seek contact with the investigation, did not ask questions. For many of Vanessa's loved ones, this was an alarming sign. They knew her, and they knew that she had doubts about her husband's fidelity. Investigators began to collect everything that concerned Travis, from his daily routine to his bank transactions. And it quickly became clear that behind the respectable firefighter's facade, there was a life that was not so perfect. First of all, he was having an affair. A woman named Mary Beth Fisher admitted that their relationship had been going on for several months. They met regularly, corresponded, and, most importantly, Travis assured her that he was over with Vanessa. But there were no signs of a divorce at that time. On the contrary, Vanessa was still running a business, living in the same house, and wearing a wedding ring. The motive began to emerge more clearly. According to the investigation, Vanessa could have presented Travis with an ultimatum: either a family or a new life. If she was going to file for divorce, it could have entailed financial losses. And if she also knew about her husband's affair, she may have threatened to make it public. In a small town where reputation meant a lot, this could have been a serious blow. And suddenly the version of a domestic conflict, behind which lay passion, betrayal, and fear of exposure, became the main one. Meanwhile, the examination of the weapons continued. The hunting shotgun seized from Travis's car turned out to be a key element. The marks on the barrel matched the cut pattern left on Vanessa's body. The cartridges were of the same manufacturer as the cartridge case found at the scene, but this was not enough. Although the weapon matched, it was not registered as personal. Moreover, there was no evidence directly linking Travis to the moment of the shot. The investigation was working blind. They needed either an eyewitness or an electronic trace. Investigators requested data on Travis's cellular activity on the night of the crime. The answer came a few days later. He claimed that he was at home in Asheville. However, an analysis of the cell phone activity showed that his device was moving. Between 2 and 4 a.m., a signal was recorded in the area of the motel. This refuted his alibi. Moreover, at the same time, the device turned off and then turned on in the morning, near his house. It seemed that he deliberately turned off the phone so as not to leave a digital trace. But even this did not guarantee an indictment. After all, anyone could have a mobile phone. There were no photos, videos, or witnesses confirming his physical presence at the motel. At the same time, Mary Beth's testimony strengthened the case. She admitted that a few days before the murder, Travis told her a phrase that now sounded like a death sentence. "Everything will change soon. I just need a little time." The investigation also found out that Travis was actively interested in selling weapons. A week before the tragedy, he visited a shooting range, consulted at a gun store, and purchased ammunition, which later turned out to be identical to that used in the attack. Store employees recalled that he behaved nervously, talked about hunting, but asked strange questions regarding the accuracy of a shot at close range. In parallel with the technical evidence, the investigation delved into the suspect's psychological profile. According to his former colleagues, Travis was withdrawn, not given to openness, but had a penchant for control. In relationships, he sought to dominate, patiently waiting before making decisions. He was not impulsive, and this is what made him dangerous. He could carefully plan a crime, calculating every detail. The investigation began looking for evidence of preparation. A weekly to-do list was found in Travis's house. Among the routine entries, "drop off son, pay bills," were two phrases: "night trip" and "pick up from garage." No one knew what exactly he was planning to pick up, but one of the supermarket surveillance cameras recorded his car, around 1:30 a.m. on February 19th. This put him in close proximity to the crime. Investigators began questioning his son from his first marriage, with whom Travis said he spent the night. The teenager admitted that he went to bed around 10 p.m. and did not remember his father being home the entire time. He woke up at 6 a.m., and Travis was already home. This created a window of almost 7 hours during which he could have left the house, driven to Saluda, committed the crime, and returned. Each new detail only strengthened the suspicion, but legally the investigation remained on shaky ground. More was needed. And then fate threw the investigation an unexpected find. One of Travis's colleagues said that he kept an old laptop in the garage. According to the witness, he often took notes on it, even storing copies of personal messages. During the search, the laptop was confiscated, and among the deleted files, emails were found in which Travis discussed his dissatisfaction in his marriage with a friend. Some phrases sounded ominous. "She's dragging me down. Sometimes I think how much easier it would be to live without her." Perhaps these were just emotional statements, but in combination with the facts, it looked like a confession. By the end of the second week of the investigation, the investigators had motive unwillingness to get divorced and divide property, new woman, circumstantial evidence, gun, shell casing, ammunition, behavior, false alibi, phone data, camera footage, witness statements, Mary Beth, co-workers, digital traces, recordings, letters, roots. That was enough. In March 2011, a month after the tragedy, Travis McGraw was arrested on suspicion of murdering Vanessa Mintz. When officers approached him, he did not resist. He just lowered his eyes, as if he had known all along that he would be found. While he sat in a pre-trial detention cell, the prosecutor's office prepared for the case. Meanwhile, Vanessa's family tried to understand, how could a person she trusted do this to her? The hardest part is not the loss itself. The hardest part is realizing that the threat was so close. That the love she held dear had turned into betrayal, and the man she was building a future with might have been planning her end. Travis McGraw's trial began in February 2013, 2 years after the tragic death of Vanessa Mintz. For her family, those 2 years were a time of pain, waiting, and trying to find answers in the silence left by her passing. For the prosecution, it was a period of painstaking work. Evidence was collected bit by bit. Logical chains were built. Witnesses were selected. The prosecution understood that they were facing a difficult trial. A murder without direct witnesses, without a clear DNA trace or fingerprints, which means that everything will be based on a combination of evidence, and each of them must be absolutely convincing. On the very first day of the trial, the attention of the courtroom was drawn to the accused himself. Travis McGraw sat in a dark suit with an expression of restraint on his face. He did not look broken, did not give the impression of a cruel criminal. His appearance worked for the defense. A decent father, a firefighter, a man with a stable past. The defense lawyers skillfully used this. In their opening statement, they said, "This man is not a criminal. He is a father. He is a friend. He served his community. He is being charged on circumstantial evidence and inference. We are here to show that it is not enough to ruin someone's life." But the prosecution was prepared. The prosecution, having worked through every aspect of the case, began with Vanessa herself. So that the jury would understand not only who she was, but also how her relationship with Travis developed. Her letters to a friend were read, as well as her notes in her diary, in which Vanessa expressed suspicions about her husband. One of them read, "He has become a stranger. I feel like he is hiding something. Sometimes I think he is just waiting for the moment to disappear." These words became the emotional backdrop of the entire trial. Then the prosecution began to build a chain of facts. First, the motive. Mary Beth Fisher, Travis's mistress, testified. She described how he had lied about his marriage, assured her it was almost over, promised to be free soon. The prosecutor asked, "Did he ever mention how he was going to end his relationship with Vanessa?" Mary Beth hesitated, but answered, "He said there were ways that things could be worked out. I didn't take that literally." Then, no. That answer left the jury to draw their own conclusions. It wasn't a direct admission, but it added to the sense of menace. Then came the alibi. The prosecution presented an analysis of Travis's cell phone data. A slide was shown. A map showing the coordinates of his signal. At 1 a.m., his home in Asheville. At 2:40 a.m., the area of a motel in Saluda. Then, silence. And at 6:15 a.m., the signal returned in the area of his home. The investigator explained, "The phone was turned off for a critical period of time. We can't say for sure that he was in the car, but that's when the murder occurred. That suggests that Travis was trying to hide his movements." The defense countered with its own version. Anyone could have had the phone. Travis had no reason to drive to another city at night. No camera or witness saw him at the scene. You're relying on interpretation, not facts. Their strategy was clear: raise doubt. Not refute every piece of evidence, but sow uncertainty about its reliability. But the prosecution pressed on. They called an employee of the gun store where Travis had purchased his ammunition. He confirmed that the rounds were the same type as those found at the motel. Was he interested in hunting? The prosecutor asked. What did he say? The clerk replied, He talked about shooting at short range. That surprised me because that's usually the kind of question a newbie asks. But he seemed confident. Next came a ballistics expert. He compared the shell casing found at the crime scene with the rounds from Travis's gun. The result? A high degree of match. A magnified image of the marks on the brass surface was shown on the courtroom screen. The expert explained, "They're like fingerprints. It's almost a perfect match." It was a strong point for the prosecution. Although not 100% proof, it was a convincing touch in the overall picture. An important step was the testimony of Travis's son. The teenager, who was 13 at the time of the tragedy, said he went to bed around 10 p.m. and did not remember his father being home that night. "I woke up in the morning and he was downstairs making breakfast," he said. The prosecutor clarified, "Did you hear him leaving or coming back? Number one, just don't know if he was home the whole time." This uncertainty worked against the defense. Travis's alibi was not confirmed. The defense continued to insist. "All the evidence is circumstantial. You didn't see him shoot. There are no fingerprints, no blood on his clothes, no DNA. All you have is maybes and possiblies. And that's not enough to deprive a man of his freedom." They emphasized Travis's reputation, bringing in his former colleagues who described him as a level-headed, hard-working, and devoted father. "He saved lives, and you want to portray him as a cold-blooded killer?" the lawyer said in his closing statement. But the prosecutor had the final word. He spoke calmly, without pathos. "Murderers rarely leave an autograph at the crime scene, especially those who plan their crime. But we have assembled a chain: motive, betrayal, and fear of losing money, preparation, buying a gun, trying to create an alibi, execution, driving at night, a disconnected phone, a shell casing that matched his bullets. He was there. He did it. He took the life of a woman who trusted him. This is not speculation. This is the truth." The jury retired to consider their verdict. Vanessa's family held their breath. Several hours passed. Then they returned to the courtroom. The judge asked, "What is your verdict?" "Guilty. First-degree murder." The silence in the courtroom was ringing. Someone from Vanessa's family sobbed. Travis showed no emotion. He only shook his head slightly, as if agreeing with the verdict. The judge sentenced her to life in prison without parole. For the Mintz family, it was not the end of suffering, but the end of uncertainty. They knew who had taken Vanessa from them. They knew that her death would not go unpunished. And while the pain of loss did not subside, at least there was meaning. The truth had prevailed. Vanessa's mother would later say in an interview, "We weren't looking for revenge. We wanted the truth, and we got it. Vanessa deserved it."